Hello, my name is Frank, and I've been playing video games for a very long time now. The world of gaming and the culture itself is very rare and unique. For the past 5 years, I've been studying esports, video games, and multiple subgenres within the realm of video games. And to be quite honest, fighting games have become fascinating in the context of the psychological aspect. This is going to be a series where I share my studies, theories, arguments, and whatnot to educate and discuss. And I want to begin this series with how the casual audience participates in fighting games. As I mentioned before, I've been studying fighting games and video games in general for 5 years. During this time, I took my time to progress in a fighting game called One Piece Burning Blood. I was ranked top 100 in the online ranks, as well as being the #1 respective best character player. I used this opportunity not to only study myself in the genre of fighting games, but the journey that I've been on allowed me access to other minds of fighting games. As I said before, the fighting game genre is one of the most fascinating worlds to explore. So here's the table of contents for my first plan and what you're really going to get, but I'm only going to get into chapter 1, picking your main game. I feel as if chapter 2 and 3 right now, it's not really necessary, and we can go over them in a later time. So chapter 1, picking your main game. This chapter is going to focus how the new player will venture into fighting games while not knowing how problematic this adventure can be for them. So, when you look at the many genres of video games, fighting games have always piqued the interest of the casual viewer. It's not too complex, and it has a flashy style that always brings a bringer. So what you see on screen is two of the most important factors that brings in new players. Anything else is irrelevant. The first is an already existing fan base. Now, don't pay attention to the example. The example used is very simple. For a higher and a better understanding, imagine your favorite TV show, cartoon, or whatever. This piece of content most likely has no fighting game, but the favorite TV show does have a fan base. Now, imagine if the TV show did have a fighting game. Fans of the TV show will come flying over to the product. This is the already existing fan base. And it's happened to Marvel and Injustice too. You know, if you're a fan of a certain character, you've never known about this series, then you'll take an interest. The second example, and it's a good example, we don't have to use anything else. DLC crossover characters is more of a business tactic. The concept of an already existing fanbase can be applied to the DLC character, but it works on a much larger scale. Alien from Mortal Kombat. Alien, as you all know, is from the Alien movie, from the Alien franchise, and Negan, who's in The Walking Dead, a very popular TV show, is in Tekken 7. Two huge characters with a massive fan base. So, why is it important for the new player to pick a main fighting game? Now, there's a quote right there, as you can see. You don't see Mortal Kombat players playing in Street Fighter tournaments. This is a quote where I stated in my actual study, in my little, notes or essays, if you will. The general notion of this quote is that the audience in the community and not the player themselves. So you've probably understood that line without any prior context. So you know what I'm going to be, you know what I'm going to be focusing on. But if you don't, basically, I'm going to highlight the importance of the many sub-communities within the fighting game community. But before I do, let's go over the multi-sport athletes. And, again, they do not exist within fighting games. This could be open to agreement or disagreement. It's up to you. The following statements, however, below are mere conclusions that I form based on the reaction and the general belief in the fighting game community when it pertains to all fighting games. It's as if the FGC is looking for a god to dominate in multiple fighting games. And at this point, there's only two fighting games, or two fighting game players who can really be the god that the community is looking for. But I'll save this for a later series. The definition of a multi-sport athlete, one who performs in multiple sports. But I must stress the negative aspect. This concept, and please, like when I say this, this is actually true. The concept of an athlete playing multiple sports, can only exist within high school or college. Thus, I provided a piece of context on my own. And if you disagree, I would love to hear you out, and maybe you can change my mind on the topic. But when we look at these sport athletes, multi-sport athletes, majority of them tend to fail. Brock Lesnar and Michael Jordan are the best examples. Both are in their prime in their respective sports, but when they progress to another, they fail to dominate in another sport. Now, how does all of this relate to fighting game players? So I've come up with the key elements for the adaptation and the practice for the new player. It's been talked about among fighting game players like frame data and footsies, but no one has ever considered key elements. So the key elements: character knowledge, frame data, moveset knowledge, reaction time, and instrument use. Now, what is instrument use? It's your device. Are you using a controller, a pad, or a stick, and this is something where I'll see in many forums, many videos, it doesn't really matter what device you're using. Contrary to belief, it really does matter whether you use a stick or a pad. This is something that deserves its own series. I feel as if that concept or that topic deserves a lot of praise and a lot of discussion and more education. There's a very educational videos on the topic of instrument usage, and most times you'll find that it always comes down to preference. Well, I don't really believe that's the case. I mean, there are benefits to using a pad and there's benefits to using a stick. And again, I feel as if this deserves its own separate video, so I'll talk about this later in a future series. Now, there are various elements that apply to all fighting games like footsies and zoning, but the above are key to performing exponential at multiple fighting games. The key is focused on long-term memorization, and this can be harmful overall for the fighting game player. Skill plateau can also play a role because of the long-term memorization needed. Another factor to note, progression you make both in the mechanical and mental aspect will be disrupted, thus causing your progression to fall back at zero. Essentially, you are disrupting the flow of progress or progression. So the new player must gain these key elements, unless otherwise they're wasting their time. So now you need to pick your main game. Fighting games is a genre that is easy to get into but difficult to master. The key elements and the impossible factor of playing multiple games will force the casual player to decide which game to master and play. The answer that the casual player will decide is either by character preference, gameplay, graphics, or with help of the community. As I mentioned before, this is what we are going to talk about. This is, one of the most amazing aspects of the FGC is that it's broken down into sub-communities, and there's really no bad blood between any of the communities except for Smash. And that's for a different series that I would love to cover. But as you're about to read, I couldn't find any appropriate terminology to categorize the ideological conflict among the community professionals and veterans. So if you have better terms, please share them. But let's read this slide. The FGC is broken into separate factions of the respective game itself, and when the casual player will try to start, he or she will seek for guidance. This is a bloody fact. We've all tried to look out for some guidance. Unfortunately, there's a philosophy that in the conflict with itself with new players, rank 2 versus rank 1, this is what I was mentioning. I don't have appropriate terminology for this, rank 2, rank 1 ideology. So if you have better names, go ahead, write them down in the comment section or write a message. I would greatly appreciate that. So let's take a look at the ideologies. Rank 4, why should I help you? Waste of time. rank 1, I'm going to make you better, but because I want a good fight. To the rank 2, oh, that's supposed to be rank 2, yeah. I don't know why it's that. I don't know why it's rank 4. I apologize. But to the rank 2, he or she views the new player as a stranger, whereas rank 1 views it as master and student. So it's become a master versus stranger, master versus student. Two very different ideologies that will reflect the player's decision process. So, side-by-side comparison of the rank 2 ideology and the rank 1 ideology. And again, if anybody has a better name for these ideologies, I would greatly appreciate it. So let's start with rank 2. And I want to know if you are watching this on YouTube or anywhere else, please let me know what you feel is the best ideology, the best mindset when going into a new game. So let me know, please. The belief to train yourself stems from the arcade era. No internet, no manual, players didn't know what they do, so every time they lost a quarter, they were motivated to learn by themselves to make sure they wouldn't lose any more money. Here are the benefits of following the rank 2 ideology. Discipline, self-teaching, maturity, tolerance, patience, determination, and willpower. Fighting games that follow this ideology, The King of Fighters, Marvel vs. Capcom, Soul Calibur, and Tekken. Now granted, these games, we'll get into that. We'll get into that. FGC ideology rank 1, the belief to train a casual or a scrub, respectfully, comes from the fact that in tournaments, we always see the same face. Retired veterans and current professionals have acknowledged this. The pro will train ultimately for selfish reasons to get the best match they can. Like the rank 2, there are benefits. Fighting game language, identifying error, creativity, problem solving, logic, when reasoning under pressure, and that is my favorite. That is my favorite benefit that deserves its own video or its own lecture, its own study. Management, mindfulness, responsibility, shrewdness, and I put parentheses because this is also very important, and cognizance. Fighting games that follow this ideology, Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. Now, what's so fascinating about Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter having this ideology is the simple fact that Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter are the main fighting games that started the fighting game world. Okay. But just because a fighting game community follows an ideology doesn't mean all players follow it. In the Mortal Kombat community, you will find players who believe in rank 2. So let's go back. So FGC ideology rank 1, as you see below, this ideology is believed in the Mortal Kombat community and Street Fighter. However, just because a community believes in it doesn't mean that some players can believe it in well. So, and this is vice versa for rank 2. Maybe some Tekken players actually believe in the ideology of a rank 1. So disregard the rank 1 ideology. It really comes down to rank 2. Now this is because most oftentimes when the new player goes online, they'll get teabagged and they'll get dominated super easily. So it really comes down to rank 2 and how the new player how the new player reacts. They can either be motivated or discouraged, and most often it can result in both. That is where we are going to end this study / lecture / discussion. In chapter 2, the drop-off, I want to discuss how players just quit. Obviously, it correlates to the rank 1 or the rank 2 ideology because it's basically based on reaction. And in this chapter 2, the next time, which will be in the later, why do new players quit so soon? So this is what you're going to get: the lack of content, mainstream Hawkfest, and the human player. When it comes to mainstream Hawkfest, I am going to go deep into that and just expose the bullshit with the mainstream media, the mainstream Hawkfest that it is. So chapter 2, if you are interested, please subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. I am Frank Fan Talk, and I will see you all in the next video.